So I'm taking the train in on Wednesday afternoon, and I get an email. Your application for a pass for tomorrow has been rejected.
What?
Yeah. And I went and looked back at my original email, and it was like, you are confirmed. This is one ticket for the... It wasn't, we will review this.
Yeah.
Now, if they had told me on Monday, we will review this, I wouldn't have bought a train ticket. I wouldn't have bought a hotel room. Right.
Yeah.
But it was like, what the F? And so I'm literally on the train, like while this is happening, because the train has Wi-Fi, and I'm like doing some stuff because I'm getting work done. And so I replied to them. I was like, hey, like, I get it that you might decide I'm not the person you want to be there, but today's the wrong day.
Yeah,
like I've already laid out
en route.
money.
Yeah.
I'm en route. I've laid out money based on your confirmation. I went back and looked at the confirmation email. Like, did I misread this? Because I could have. I was moving quickly, and I was like, didn't expect it to work. So when I saw something positive, I was like, dang it. Like, I got to go now. And so I never heard back from him, right? Like business day ended. I went out. I had dinner with a friend in New York, checked into my hotel. And so I woke up the next morning, and I'm like, well, how's this going to go? And I walked the 6 blocks from where I had a hotel to this event.
Okay.
I'm like, as I'm walking there, I'm like, I am assuming that they are not going to let me in. And I was like, wow, that's really powerful here, because I'm walking in with the power of presumed failure. Like I'm expecting to arrive and have them turn me away. So, like, I have my story to tell,
yes.
right? I'm practicing my delivery of like, okay, wait a minute. I'd heard someone had used a generalization to describe New Yorkers in general, right? And all generalizations are wrong, but they also have some truth in them.
Yeah.
Right. And what they said was, and they were contrasting to other cities. I won't share the other cities, but they were saying New Yorkers are not polite, but they are kind. And I've spent a lot of time in New York. I grew up near New York, and it's like, that's true, that people aren't going to waste a lot of time with pleasantries. But if you're somewhere in the city and like you are in a scenario where you need help, someone will help you. Like they might not even say a word to you, but they will help you and then go on their way, right? Like this.
Right.
And in general, again, these are generalizations. And so I was like, okay, wait a minute. I'm going to be dealing with a New Yorker. Like the person who they have staffing the desk is from New York, right? They either work for the IAB in New York, or they're someone that they've hired for this event today.
So
I'm
you
like,
want to be direct and fast.
I'm going to be direct, kind. I'm not, but kind. Like I could go in and like, raise the roof and be like, oh my, you screwed me and F you and all this stuff.
That's
bad. But A, that's probably not going to get me what I want. And B, I'm going to be doing this in front of other people, many of whom know me by sight. So do I want to be the one that's having a tantrum? No. Yeah. Obviously. Yes. Right. So I'm like, okay, so I have this thing, but the whole way through, I'm like, I'm probably going to just go back to my hotel and get some work done during the day and then head off to PepCom in the afternoon. That's the worst thing. Right. And so I kind of come to this realization, and I was like, oh, now I'm super comfortable walking into this scenario. And I walked in and I go to check in, and they're like, they look you up. You need to go talk to them over there. They'll hand you your badge. I'm like, okay, sounds great. So I go and I talk to them at the other thing, and they're like, you need to talk to the person at the very end of the table, like, escalating me up. And I, of course, know why, obviously.
Yes.
Yeah,
but you hadn't said anything yet about the conflicting messages.
Right. I just figured I'd walk in and say, I'm Dave Hamilton, and I, if you want to see my email approval, I have that ready to go on my phone, because obviously. Yeah. And so finally, there's somebody else in front of me having some similar issue or whatever. And they finally get to me. I'm like, hey, I'm Dave Hamilton. And she says, yeah, I see you have a registration here that was canceled. And I'm like, yeah, I got a weird email about that yesterday. It didn't really make sense. I'm like, I got my confirmation ticket. I can show it to you on Monday. And that's when I bought a train ticket and a hotel. And I was direct about it, made sure they understood the order of events. And all of this was true. I didn't mention that I was going to New York anyway to PepCom, but I did pay extra for the train ticket the day before. And of course, I got a hotel room. Of course, that was on Marriott points, but again, like you know, the points were spent. Like it was a done deal. Yep. So I delivered the story in a way that was most optimal for my desired outcome, but I wasn't necessarily expecting them to bend any rules for me. And the woman's like, yeah, you put your title as publisher and podcaster because that's just what I put anytime anybody asked me for my title. And she was like, that's the problem here. And I'm like, oh, okay. Do you want to change my title? She's like, no, I don't care. She's like, I'm just going to approve your ticket. You're here. She's like, you know, like they did like cancel
that's the right
you.
Thing to do. That is the right thing to do, boy.
And I was nice to I was kind to her, but I was direct. I never said like, I mean, I think I said, I'm hoping you can help me. You know, those kinds of things. Offering a little bit of vulnerability, like, because she's the one in power. It's not me. You know, but I wasn't groveling or anything, and I wasn't I wasn't pouring on all the extra niceties, but I was being kind.
Was
and
the meeting
it worked fine.
Was the meeting you were having important enough to where if you couldn't get in, that would have been a problem?
It turns out, yes.
Okay. Yeah.
I did not know. I thought this was just to say hi. I always say that conferences, whatever they are good for reminding one another that we're human. There's a new person on this particular account at this one company, and I'd never met them before. They haven't done any business with us in a couple of years. There's been they used to do a ton of business with us like 5+ years ago. And we got lost in the institutional memory as people moved out of their jobs. And when I finally met with this person, they were like, oh, this is great timing. Like, oh my gosh, we definitely need to be working with you. We are currently planning all of the second half of the year in these next 2 weeks. So this is perfect timing. And it was like, oh, I had no idea how important this meeting was.
Yeah. It's interesting because, this power of presumed failure, it's kind of the opposite of the way I always preach about thinking like, oh, you'll get in. You just have to think that I've got it. You know, so it's an interesting take on it.
And I did that too. Right? Like it was both of those things. I acted like
you're confident enough to
correct.
You're walking in, you're being friendly, your confidence like, well, I should be here. I'm in the industry. I'm not trying to, BS my way into something, right?
I mean, based on the title that I put in there, I should not have been allowed in.
I see. Yeah.
Based on everything we do here, yes, I should have been allowed in. But they didn't know, like, all they have to go on is what I told them in advance, which was enough to bounce me. And of course, now I know how not to present myself again in the future. But no, they did it. And the woman realized, like, okay, well, we can't bounce this guy while he's on a train down here like that. That's kind of that's not the best move. No,
that's
she didn't even flinch. She's like, "No, I'm just going to print you a thing."
Yeah, that's great. That's the right answer.
You're right. I acted confident. I acted like everything was going to work out in the way I wanted it to. But in my head, I assumed it would not, and that really allowed me to go into this very calmly because there was never what it prevented me from ever doing was getting to a desperation moment. Like if she had said no, I would have pushed a little bit. Yeah. And then if she had said no again, and I kind of did push a little bit. She's like, well, it was canceled. And that's when I bought the tickets, yada. Yeah. And then that was all it took. But if she pushed back again, I would have been like, okay, thanks. And I would have pieced out. I would have texted the person I was going to meet with and said, can we meet across the street at a coffee shop? Like whatever. Yeah. Like, and I would have solved the problem a different way. But that presumed failure allowed me not to get desperate, which I think is actually what helped me get in.